Today we are interviewing Manja from Novi Radio Beograd. Before starting, Manja, would you like you to ask something about your background, experience?
I'm like 31 and I grew up here in Belgrade. I finished Classical Music Academy, and after that I went to London to do my master's. I have a master's in classical music, and instead of staying in London and having a very nice world career, I came back and I started Association of Multimedia Artists together with 5 friends.
It's Europolis.
It's Europolis.
Okay.
And we started it in 2004, which was basically the year when I graduated from the Royal College of Music in London. And simply we started immediately with large projects, and that's why basically I never fully came back to my violinistic solo career. And I just kind of redirect and went more and more into sociably engaged projects, into multimedia production, into artistic production, basically, which is on a much wider scope than my previous education. So it's basically, it came somewhere from me, you know, all these interests, and it was mostly a need to develop further social and artistic skills that are more useful in contemporary world than only classical music.
Okay.
And it basically started as a little association, and then grew into something that now has a lot of artistic platforms, taking care of this internet radio station, which is at the moment only independent media, basically in Serbia. All others are either half or full commercialized in a certain sense. And we do a lot of things. Some things are quite similar to what you do, dealing with traumas of the cities, trauma of produced by the geopolitics. We do a lot of making bridges between divided public spheres. We work on a regional level a lot for a long time. So kind of we are behaving like we are living in New York, but we are only in Belgrade.
Change of context.
Yes.
But could you give us some example of what has been your project? What you did.
Similar to the thematic scope.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I started when I started dealing with artistic production as a cultural manager. I was mostly going for only artistic production and going towards progressive and innovative. And then at a certain point I realized that this is not environment that has ears or eyes for this, and I slowly started also dealing with something that might be called cultural politics. So making a framework for my association and other similar NGOs to affiliate or work better, because conditions for the last 10 years in this institutional frameworks are really on a low scale. So we have to get involved into cultural politics in order to produce a structure in which we can work. But this, when I say cultural politics, it actually came with this awareness of traumatized environment in cultural sense. So I first started with contact with a girl named Sonia Lebosch, who is a cultural urbanist, and she's an expert basically on this subject, and she's a cultural and visual anthropologist as well.
Cool.
And some years ago I met her here in Belgrade, and we started developing some things together. She's running quite, so to say, a successful association in Zagreb, which is called Association for Intercultural and Interdisciplinary Research. And basically she was the one who gave me the first injection to start exploring, digging, researching on the subject.
Okay.
And since I was pretty young at the time, that was a whole new, field for me to discover. So I started a few projects with her. And basically one of her main platforms is called Cyber Cinematography, and it's dealing with media archaeology, and it's dealing with visual anthropology in the past of certain cities, and then the material that is taken from the National Archives mostly gets modified into artistic work, like into visual installation.
That's very interesting.
Or something, and then projected actually on the simulacra of the town itself. Well, it was very interesting for people to see the change in such a direct way. So basically it was a little, so to say, baby made by Sonia, me, and Stevan Lung, who is a very nice artistic filmmaker.
Okay.
Who also lived for a long time in Britain and then moved back to Belgrade. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the, so to say, opening point, the start. And it was a big start.
A big start, yeah.
The radio started as a private company, basically.
Yeah.
It was privately funded for a year, and then private funds disappeared, and a group of people who was in charge of the radio decided to keep going with the project on a voluntary basis.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you think this was like very enthusiastic and nice thing, but it worked out. At a certain point, it transformed a lot, because there is a big difference between a project started as a private company, funded,
it was different,
and it's something that becomes completely a civil sector initiative, and it basically depends on the goodwill of a certain amount of people. And it's still going through some metamorphosis. And the idea is to keep it alive at this moment because it's really the only independent free radio format, which is called in the world. It's the radio made of people with no interests. So we are behaving as a socially engaged platform that develops the culture of freedom of speech, develops the culture of multiculturality, and we are very harsh about anti-discrimination. So we are trying to make, so to say, circles of young people, middle-aged people, and old people to join forces in some, so to say, universal human values.
I'm asking you, what's your perspective about the future?
The perspective is what we made out of it. This is a very harsh environment, and I'm doing all these projects and I'm running all these organizations that are also becoming institutions in a way, because I simply can't do what I'm educated for. So there is a lot of people like me who have a lot of energy and who are a bit nuts, and they just don't want to give up on everything. Perspective in Serbia, it's really not a jolly thing to think about. I think there is at the moment not good, how do you say, signs that things will change rapidly
for the better.
For the general conditions. There is a lot of problems in between sectoral communication. For example, it's very hard to communicate with this institutional state structures, for example, and then the NGO scene, independent scene between themselves are really separated as well. So, and at the end of the day, this is a big environment and there is a lot of things, a lot of different people. And at the moment, it looks like everyone is pulling on different sides. But I'm sure that at a certain point the time will come where people realize that they have to sit at the same table, not only to be nice to each other, but to actually take the same responsibilities.
Yeah.
And it's not. I'm definitely not a pessimistic person, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
I know that every effort that you put in will come out somewhere else. In the future. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. So you're always hoping, but things are really not jolly at the moment.
Yeah.
And perspective, to be concrete, the concrete perspective might be the new way of education. Because the generations that are coming are much smarter than we are, and they need better education than the existing system. And hopefully this will change first, because it will be the biggest first issue to deal with. Yeah.
Okay.